hold on to these films. I'm pushing forward, but not forgetting, because I want to put a nice bow on all this once we cover all the films to see, because I think there are a lot of themes that play out across all of these films, and I want to make sure we spend time on that. So not forgetting, but moving forward, just to make sure we cover the 5. And again, our guest, man, super grateful to have author of Color Monitors, the Black Face of Technology in America, University of Texas, Austin, Dr. Martin Kevorkian. Next up, 1973, going back a little further, Live and Let Die. This film I'll share with listeners. This film, now we're moving to films that I had already seen when they were suggested when Dr. Kevorkian visited us last month. And I remember I saw this film when I first began seriously studying racism, white supremacy. And Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., he frequently suggests films for non-white people to watch to study and break down racism, white supremacy. One of the films he suggested was Godfather, which we originally were going to do today. Another one is Shawshank Redemption, which we did last time. I took that and ran with it and saying, hey, you really can use films as a great tool to study white supremacy. I started looking, and I found that there are white nationalist, white supremacist websites that also have films that they do reviews for, that they say these are great films, we really like these films, they have all the messages that we want to see about white people. This film, Live and Let Die, was on their list of films, and I'll read to you all what they said about Live and Let Die. They have this film listed as race realism, and what they mean by that is this is a film that gives you unpleasant truths about black people, white people, the world. And they go on to say, Live and Let Die, other than a 60-second ugly scene, otherwise fantastic. I'm assuming that they are talking about the 60-second scene with James Bond and Roger Moore's character, or excuse me, Roger Moore and Gloria Hendry. But they list this as a white national classic. Afro-Caribbeans as horrifying monsters in this James Bond classic in which Bond steals the white girl from a black drug cartel. That's directly from their website. I want folks, before I get Dr. Kevorkian's feedback, if you're listening to this program at Blog Talk Radio, if you can open a tab, if you are listening actually on the show page for this program, for this specific episode, click the tab for Gus T Renegade. Click that so you'll just be on the show page for the C.O.W.S, the main show page, so that you can see the image for this photo. I have an image up. I have 2 images. One of them is Kerry Washington, but the other image where you see James Bond with Gloria Hendry's character. Look at that image. Just take a couple seconds. We'll talk about that. Dr. Kevorkian, what thoughts did you have about Live and Let Die?
Well, first, I just wanted to, it's a kind of a little bit of IMDb quote-unquote trivia that I think would confirm your hypothesis about what the quote ugly scene was. That the love scenes with Gloria Hendry, that is the Agent Carver, Rosie Carver, were edited out when the film was initially screened in South Africa. So it seems to me that those particular scenes, there's a complexity because they're ugly in other ways. I mean, you could find it offensive as that website that you talk about probably did, from just not wanting to see that depicted. But you could equally say that it is ugly for the very racist framework within which the scene is placed. Because it seems to be, Rosie Carver is displaying herself as sort of an incompetent spy. I don't know, want to make a joke. I thought it was interesting that, you said James Bond and Roger Moore. I suppose you could always say that James Bond is really making love to himself, but and sort of this image of himself, right? It's all about his own prowess and his own irresistibleness and whatnot. But here you have a character who she says, "Oh, I should have never gotten into this. I'm going to be completely useless to you." So first of all, presenting herself as someone who would either be useful or useless to James Bond. And Bond's remark is, "Oh, I'm sure we'll be able to lick you into shape," right? So there's a reference there, indirectly, but to abuse. She does not initially give in to James's charm until it shows that she is freaked out by a voodoo hat that is in a room with the bloody chicken feathers. So that whole monster stereotype is then evoked, and her susceptibility to it, right? So she's first displayed as a kind of a useless spy who talks about her own ineffectiveness, and then someone who flees into the arms of James because of her superstitiousness. So that was just my thought about that scene. It sounds like you've got a lot to say here, so I'll.
Man, I remember watching it the first time and just shaking my head because this film was presented to the world as progress. For people, if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, Gloria Hendry, how about this for coincidence? She's a guest on Blog Talk Radio today, and they have a photograph from Live and Let Die. It's scrolling by right now on Blog Talk Radio, but she's a guest, wow. And she's in to talk about her role as the first African American Bond girl, and this is progress. This is I don't know if people listening have seen this film, but this came out in 1973, civil rights movement upheaval and all of that in this area of the world. This was, hey, we're making strides. You've got a black female in a James Bond flick and a lot of black people in a James Bond flick. We've got progress. Racism, white supremacy is on the way out. And for me, watching this film, it's just like, I can see why this film would end up being on a blatant white supremacist website as one of their A+, gotta have, love this. And again, they say this is race realism, giving you an accurate portrayal of black people. Can you kind of, I don't even know which direction I want to go first.
Yeah, you invoked, the whole ongoing history of civil rights and progress in that history that is sort of in the background. It struck me that this is a film that is, in a certain sense, post-civil rights and very much about anxiety of changes that civil rights and black power movements were bringing about, and really trying, in that anxiety, often seeking explicitly to undermine or discredit aspects of that progress. Again, maybe I'm sort of, this is something Mr. Nero cued me into last time. He sort of asked me, what song was playing in Shawshank Redemption. So I started thinking, about even the title song, Live and Let Die, which is in itself could be seen as, the opposite of sort of a progressive view of views of cultural and social, I don't know, what would you say, the later term would be sort of multiculturalism, but, cultural pluralism might have been the term at the time. In other words, Live and Let Live would be the idea of people from apparently different backgrounds and everyone can get along together, the idea of harmony. I'm thinking of you can spend all day critiquing it too, but I'm thinking of it's the song that plays in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is not one of the songs that it's not one of the movies that we were going to talk about, but like the theme song for that one is you've got to give a little, you've got to live a little. That's the story of love. But this is the story of live and let die, and but the chorus is specifically in this ever-changing world in which we're living. You've got to live and let die. So the live and let die, or the trigger to violence, the violence and destruction that Solitaire says James Bond is bringing, is about bringing violence and destruction to a world that is perceived to be changing, and changing in ways that are threatening or hostile. That's what live and let die brings the end to live and let live, because of those kind of changes. And just for example, one of the things you see in I think actually it's related to, in some ways, to some of the things that come up in Last King of Scotland, which is made in the present time but then set in the 70s. Another film that was kind of like this in a way was, I don't know if you saw The Bank Job, but it was also set in... Did you see The Bank Job?
Yes, I did. I was going to mention that. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that these are movies that are about setting up someone who has all the appearances of a black power leader, and then discrediting that person as a mere criminal, as just in that summary that you read, leader of a drug cartel, right? I mean, you see this kind of paranoid idea in this movie of Live and Let Die, that sort of all the black people in Harlem are part of this vast network, that they're all talking to one another on a walkie-talkies, that they've got a complete power grid and a power network set up, and that the people, the James Bonds of the world, have to be fearful of that network. I mean, there's another way of summarizing this film, which is another way to look at it. This is another thing I got from IMDb trivia, which is that this is the first Bond film in which James Bond commits a political assassination, in that Kananga is a head of state of San Monique. So, I mean, he's got license to kill, but he's never actually killed a political leader until this film. And this is like, 11 years into the franchise. What is this, like the 8th or 9th Bond film? So this is the first time where the story was set up to such that it would appear necessary to sort of take on a whole head of state and actually kill that person, at the same time revealing that individual had, a double life as Mr. Big, the drug lord. And also, I don't know if this is related, but about it's also the first James Bond film that takes place in a fictional country, the fictional country of San Monique, which most people say is sort of modeled on Jamaica, where Ian Fleming was from. But I think is a way in which these anxieties about social change and about the possibility of black power are being projected into an imaginary state, and then can be terminated in that state.
Wow, I'm glad you brought up Bank Job, because I was going to toss that out too, but you're already on your job as usual. Did you have any thoughts on Solitaire? I guess both any relevance or symbolism in the white female character being named Solitaire, and then just how that plays out in terms of her role in relation to Mr. Big and losing her power once she comes in contact with James Bond.
Yeah, one thing again to note. I don't know how seriously this was considered, but one of the rumors was that one of the people who was considered for the role was Diana Ross. but they clearly went a different direction with it, and I think significantly so, because her whiteness is played up so. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. There's the bell, but is played up so much in the sort of that climactic scene where they're going to sacrifice her. She's in the she's the. I mean, it's really a throwback to really old movies like King Kong.
Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Where there is sort of a sexual threat that is being posed to her in many different ways. I hadn't thought about the fact of her being called Solitaire. I mean, I think in a certain sense it's a way of emphasizing, what the plot, as you suggested, does emphasize, her virginity. That early on in the film, Mr. Big says to her, when the time comes, or I will take your power away from you, and I will be the one that will choose to do that. And it turns out it's James Bond who does that. And when we see that she loses her power after having had a physical relationship with James Bond, that he kind of sets up with actually a cheap card trick, it is only at that point that we can infer that she has not had any relations with Kananga or Mr. Big, depending on how you refer to him. So there's a way in which the fact that James Bond's action takes away her power is a kind of reassurance that although there appeared to be, this black man with a white woman, of course it emphasizes no, nothing has transpired between them. Otherwise, she would have lost her power. There's reference to her mother also having lost her power at a certain time, and obviously she had to have, as James Bond said, Solitaire's physical proof of that. One of the unanswered questions of the film is who is Solitaire's father. I don't know if this is sort of a thing that if it was some other English spy that also did that, but it's unclear what that relationship was. So there is a certain sense where we don't know the whole story of Solitaire's origins. I also say it's striking that it's the only James Bond film in which the supernatural figures. And on the one hand, it's all about demystifying the supernatural. Very often, the apparently supernatural powers of the priests are revealed to be technological, right? That really there's a technological power that has been wired into this island. You have all these animatronic devices, but on the other hand, there's the idea that this white woman has some real power of clairvoyance or ability to tell the future. So it's almost as if there is a suggestion of supernatural that is pervasive and very different for the Bond universe. But I think it's striking that its greatest power seems to be vested in the person of this white woman, played by Jane Seymour. And it says in the credits, introducing Jane Seymour. I didn't know. I guess maybe this was her first big role. But you think of her as someone who then went on to have great success, much more success than a lot of Bond girls did, I would say. Just anecdotally, you talked about when you first studied this. I hadn't studied this before, but this seems to be one of the James Bond films that's in the heavy TV rotation, so it must be well liked. It seems like it's the one that used to always be on TV. I don't know. and again, this is totally anecdotal, but I went into the local video store and they had the complete James Bond collection, and this was the only one that was checked out.
Wow.
They sent me to the other location, and the guy before he checked it out to me, he says, "Yeah, well, let me look at the disc out and see if it's scratched. This one goes out a lot."
Wow.
So you can refer to the line you were going to use to start the film, to start the show, right? Yeah.
Oh, wow. As I said, refreshing to have a white person who's willing to be brutally honest and candid. Dr. Martin Kevorkian. Man. I wanted to make sure, I don't know if people have seen this film. There's a line, it's early in the film. James Bond is in a cab, and there's a black male driving, and he says, take me, I forget where he's going, take me to wherever. And the black guy says, for $20, I'll take you to a Klan rally. And he turns around, and he's looking at him, and he's laughing, and I was just like, whoa, that's really, to be in a system of white supremacy and to see a black character say that on film and to apparently be serious, even if he was joking, just, man, what a line. In this film, in the context of this film, what a line. And I also wanted to point out Kananga. I thought that name was significant because this film came out in 1973 during the so-called Civil Rights Movement. Ron Karenga, hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, real person, Ron Karenga, he is credited with founding the holiday known as Kwanzaa. I have come to conclude that those types of name similarities are not coincidental. Now, I'm not saying that they did it on purpose, but he was very active. He also was in a group called U.S. Slaves that was a rival organization to the Black Panther Party during the 60s. They had a lot of violent clashes. His name was well known, Ron Karenga. If you look on Google, I'm sure his name will pop up. I didn't think that was a coincidence. I could be incorrect, and I'm not saying that they did it purposely, but I don't think that's a coincidence.
Well, it's just an association, but particularly if he was the founder of Kwanzaa, this is a film that has repeated anxieties about non-whites gathering and celebrating, right? That it's the repeated funeral scene that then turns into kind of a Mardi Gras celebration. And every time it happens, it's because they've taken out a CIA agent, right? That the idea of congregating and celebrating a holiday is actually, a cover for a kind of non-white conspiracy or and deadly operation. Another thing, I don't really understand why this is the case, but they also had a list of how the title, Live and Let Die, was literally translated into different languages. And evidently, when it was released in Japan, the literal translation was The Dead Slave, which I don't really understand, but on another level, I think it might make sense. So.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting. Very context. Context often helps you understand meaning. I think, as in with a doctorate in English, would you say that's accurate?
Well, I hope so, but it's you're the one providing the context here with Ron Karenga. I did not know that. So yes.
Wow. I guess before we push off into Last King of Scotland, Solitaire, not being sexually involved with any of the black people that are her captors, or I don't know how she ended up with them voluntarily or whether they captured her, whether she's a hostage, but her not being sexually involved with them. And I think the movie, we talked about the screens. You talked about the screens that were used in Monster-in-Law to detract from this being about race, this film, they're very, I think, over the top in making sure that you know, hey, there's nothing sexual going on with this white woman and any of these black people, nothing at all. I feel that is a consistent theme in just a myriad of films, whether you're talking about Pelican Brief with Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington, Hancock with Will Smith and Charlize Theron, I, Robot, Will Smith again. I forget the lead white female actress in that film, but even Pelican Brief with Ving Rhames' character and Uma Thurman, they're married, but you really only see them together on the screen at the same time for maybe 5 seconds or so. It's very brief that they're on the camera for the same time. Just a recurrent theme, in my view, where you never see the white woman, non-white male, particularly a black male. You do not see them sexually engaged, and they are, in my view, just over the top about making sure you understand that doesn't happen. And hearing what you said at the beginning about how they cut the scene out with Roger Moore and Gloria Hendry, they cut that scene out. I don't think this movie could have played in 1973 if there had been any sort of sexual scene with Solitaire and any of the black males in this film.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of indirectly. It's also that relationship, or I should say, non-relationship, is the subject of a joke with the Southern white sheriff, where the sheriff has a brother-in-law who has a very fast boat, and they're going to call upon the brother-in-law to use the boat in pursuit. But one of Kananga's men, in fact, particularly the man who the sheriff has previously insulted by calling him a boy, takes Billy Bob's boat and is seen racing down the bayou with it. And the sheriff doesn't quite catch it, but the other police officers, or sheriff's men, whatever they are, see this guy going by, and the line is, "Are you sure that was your brother-in-law?" Right, because the implication is that obviously Kananga's man is non-white, and that would mean that would have been a relationship between a black man and a white woman in the white sheriff's family. But in fact, of course, again, the audience is in on the fact that is not the case, and so is in a sense reassured, but is allowed to have a joke at the expense of what is presumed to be the discomfort or the embarrassment that the sheriff would have at such a apparent revelation. Just also thinking about the Hancock comparison about how anytime there is even any beginnings of connection or contact between the Will Smith character and the white woman in the lead, it's as if there's this repulsive force that just drives them away, right? In the final scene where Solitaire is going to be executed, there's a man who's dancing in a goatskin, and he takes out this snake, and he is very clearly threatening her with a snake. And at one point, it is shot so that you can't see him or the snake, but you only see the shadow of the snake as it is cast across her face and her body. And it's very clearly cast as a kind of a symbolic sexual threat there, I think, with that shadow being cast in that form. But it's just almost instantaneous. It just is abruptly terminated, and then on the next, it's on to the next part of the ritual. So the snake, does not come into contact with her, and before, of course, anything else will happen, then James Bond comes to the rescue. And then one final thing, just to reiterate something that you cued me into about a couple of shows about this real significance of the Terminator. One thing I saw in the final image is of the laughing Baron Samedi character. he's laughing in the back of the train, and he turns into a burning skull. And you see that quick, rapid interchange between the face, which has earlier been portrayed. He exists in his human form, but also in this animatronic form. There's the fake version of him. And then that burning skull that to me looks like it anticipates the imagery of the Terminator. So.
Oh.
And because that skull with the red eyes and the
Wow,
character Teehee also with his technological arm.
Yes, that's right.
So, there's the fear of the black body as a killing machine in this film, and as a killing machine that poses a threat to the white woman.
Wow, that's another plug for color monitors right there. Non-whites and the machine right there. Color monitors, the blackface of technology in America. I missed that one completely.